Well, one of Tehran's few global allies, China, says it supports Iran defending its sovereignty and has condemned strikes by the US and Israel. But will strong statements be as far as Beijing goes in the context of this war? To discuss this, I'm joined by Andrea Giselli, lecturer in international politics at the University of Exeter, and he joins me now from the UK. Andrea, good to have you with us today. China's top diplomat Wang Yi has accused the US and Israel of deliberately instigating this war against Iran and wants the strikes to stop immediately. Is China nervous about what's happening with one of its key allies?
So first of all, thank you for having me today. I think there's a certain degree of nervousness in Beijing, as they, much like many other countries around the world, are trying to figure out the impact of the ongoing war. That said, I believe that China has been preparing for something like this for a while. Over the past year, we've seen China really aggressively building up its strategic reserves of oils. If you look at the work of Chinese analysts over the past, I think they were aware of the fact that the regime was politically, economically very weak. And so probably they didn't predict the attack per se, but they did expect that something, that the regime could indeed be in danger at a certain point in the near future. So it's definitely the implications, not just for the bilateral trade and political relations between Beijing and Tehran, but also I think what really matters also the broader regional implications given China's presence in the region, probably what really worries Beijing. But again, I think at the moment they're kind of waiting and see how the situation will evolve.
Yes, of course, China is a huge energy consumer, the world's biggest, and we know that it's also a major buyer of Iranian oil. Most of Iranian oil goes to China. How disruptive is this for Beijing?
This is, I think, it's a bit difficult to tell because we know that about 13–14% of Chinese imports are from Iran. But as I just mentioned, China's been really building up its strategic reserves. It can also look at other sources of oil, and its economy has been rapidly electrifying. So probably its actual exposure to such kind of shock is less than many people expect. That said, of course, oil doesn't matter only for filling up the tanks of cars, but also it has broad implication when it comes to inflation across the world and so on. This can actually have quite a significant indirect impact on the Chinese economy. But in the short term, we will see. We see now prices, of course, rising. This is probably less a worry for Beijing than for other countries. But we will see exactly how it evolves, especially with the situation in the Strait of Hormuz.
Beyond the statements that Beijing has put out, do you expect further involvement of China in this conflict between Israel, US, and Iran? And are there any levers that Beijing can pull to stop the US and Israel from striking targets in Iran?
I think the answer to both questions is not really. I think the statements are what everyone expected China to do. They show a bit of diplomatic equilibrism in a way, calling for the respect of Iranian sovereignty, but also the sovereignty of other countries, which have also been bombed by Iran. But I don't think China is really has any way really to stop the conflict as it is today. I'm just reading news that China and France declared to be ready to work together to find a diplomatic solution, but I don't think there's really much that can be done. The Iranian regime is pretty much going all in into the conflict. Most likely Israel is doing the same. It's not really clear what policymakers in Washington want from this war. But in any case, I think China, like many countries, can only wait and see.
Yes, and we saw Chinese weapons and jets used in Pakistan's conflict with India, but also Cambodia's conflict with Thailand last year. No signs of that happening in Iran at the moment. But might that change? And do we know if China can or has been helping Iran militarily one way or the other?
Well, of course, China has provided military help to Iran for a long time, especially missile components and fuels for missiles and technology, for example. But there's been a long-standing discussion among experts about whether or not China has been providing, for example, air defense systems or anti-ship missiles, or will it provide them. My opinion is that that's fairly unlikely, at least for the time being. We've already seen this after the 12-day war. Nothing really happened. There were a lot of rumors. China strongly denied anything, especially the latest Reuters report about that. As far as some of the work that I've done with the people at ChinaMed Project in Italy show that even the Iranians in the past somewhat regretted, for example, buying Russian weapons instead of Chinese, but it was too late, right? So, and in any case, for China providing things like aircraft or air defense systems would be it would be somewhat, it would be crossing an important threshold in its involvement in a conflict that doesn't want to be involved in the very first place. So again, we will see how the situation evolves, especially what kind of new Iranian leadership will emerge from the ashes. But I wouldn't hold my breath, let's put it this way. I don't think there will be significant Chinese military aid at the moment.
Okay, Andrea, you've spent a decade working in China. How do people in China view more broadly, the conflict in the Middle East, and how would they see what's happening right now in Iran?
I think there are different voices. Depending on who you talk with, they'll give different answers. I think most of experts, Middle East studies experts in China, look at the region and they see a place where China should be more active, but at the same time, not a priority, especially as there's still so much unresolved in East Asia, in China's own neighborhood. And those, of course, they look at past wars by, of course, the United States and its Western allies, and they don't want to see that happening for their own country. Of course, there's a nationalist trend in the public that it's questioning the government non-action, for example. Why are we abandoning our Iranian partners? But I don't think that's really something that's going to constrain or shape the decisions made by Xi Jinping and the other leaders in Beijing.
Okay, Andrea Ghiselli, I really appreciate your thoughts on the program. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.